Hello, welcome to another episode of Break a Leg. No, of the Live Life Now podcast. Once again, I am Brian. I want to let you know this episode is about something I feel I know pretty well over the years, and that is how to be an auto damage estimator and what that entails, and what type of insights or techniques I could tell you about your own car insurance. Now, I have to be careful about some things that I say, but ultimately, I'm going to tell you my version of events from my personal experiences, um, and just kind of leave out names and things. But you get a sense of what the job's like and what I've personally went through in regards to the car repair industry. So first of all, what is an auto damage estimator or an auto damage adjuster, as it's often called? Just like it sounds, it is somebody that writes estimates on damaged cars, estimates to repair. And also you have to know a lot about the vehicles themselves. You have estimating programs that will, help you, that guide you, that are specifically made to give you the parts. They also give you labor times for how much time it should technically take to either replace that part, remove that part off the car, or also in regards to like paint times. It'll give you paint labor times to paint the panels or the bumpers or whatever it may be. There's also materials involved. So there's a lot of things that go into an estimate. Just kind of to recap what it's about and what goes on the estimate. As I mentioned, number one, parts. If parts need to be replaced, what is a replaceable part? A part that cannot be returned to what's known as pre-loss condition. Basically, a part that even if you repaired it, would never be 100% back to the way it was before the loss occurred. Secondly, is the labor itself. That is a very difficult thing to document, because what may take one person a certain amount of time may take another person a completely different amount of time. So to kind of make like a straight version of how that should work and kind of come to agreed labor times instead of negotiating every single part of the entire estimate, there are popular estimating programs out there, such as CCC and Mitchell, Auditex, and maybe a handful of others that are used in the repair industry that will help give you times based off of what an average technician would take to repair or replace those certain items. So that depends on the estimating program itself and the way they calculate the labor. These programs do not coordinate with one another. They sometimes have significantly different labor times listed, even if they're doing the same exact type of repair or replacement of that part. The good news with these programs is, in most cases, the cars, once you put the what's known as the vehicle identification number or the VIN of the vehicle, once you put that into the system, you can usually have the vehicle's information pop up. It's much better than it used to be back in the day, where things would have been handwritten. The part numbers are usually preloaded into the system based off, and it's broken up into sections. So the front bumper, grills, headlights, hoods, fenders, doors, quarter panels, tail lights, rear bumpers, roof. But then you can go into things like electrical. You can go into parts, interior, for example, and many other things. Suspension is a big one, of course. And there's front and rear suspension. There's undercarriage to the vehicle. The trunk assembly or luggage lid or lift gate or tailgate, depending on what type of vehicle it is. So it's broken up into all these sections. And now the other thing that's a big thing I've mentioned is that there are different types of parts when it comes to writing an estimate. There are the typical parts that people think of that are known as OEM parts, or original equipment manufacturer parts. Those are dealer parts. For example, if you have a Nissan, those are parts that came from some type of parts department from Nissan or whatever car company it is. Obviously, there are dozens of brands out there when it comes to cars, just in the United States alone. And then when you go overseas, there's even more. So just kind of to recap, there's OEM, original equipment manufacturer parts. Those are the parts that most people say they want. Just know that even if those parts are under the brand name, those are not always made by the people that run the brand. They may hire a third-party company to make those parts and slap their name on the parts. So there are variances when it comes to this stuff. Also, there's something known as aftermarket parts. These are brand new parts that are made by a third-party company. They legally used to have, or at least that's the last check for me, have to have some minor differences for copyright or trademark reasons. And so there might be slight variances in fit or style or whatever the case may be. They usually are also considered quality parts, but it depends on the manufacturer of those aftermarket parts and the companies. Some aftermarket companies are definitely a higher quality than others. So that, no one aftermarket part may be the same, especially when it comes to certain parts of the cars. The most popular replaced parts of the cars, I would say, are the bumper covers. Typically, probably the front bumper covers. I think there's a lot more front end collisions than rear, but it just depends. Also, there's different styles of parts. There's obviously the plastic ones, which is the common one, but you also get textured components. And then you get into the panels, and they can be made out of all types of different metals, high-strength steels, ultra-high-strength steels, aluminum. There's frames in a lot of these vehicles or unibodies. Anyways, there's a lot of things to know. And you only get good at knowing these things from experience. And it takes time. And as I mentioned, every estimating program is different, but every company you work for is different too. And their expectations of what they want from you. There's also paint codes to consider. There's different types of paint. You have normally the standard type of paint that you see on most vehicles are what are known as a base coat and clear coat finish, which is basically like you have your standard color, and then they put over like a clear sheen to that color, and that's what you expect. But there are also more complex types of paintwork out there, such as three-stage or tri-coat paints. They are often known as pearls, or they might have different levels of metallics in them and things too. But most metallics, that doesn't make them a three-stage, right? Those are still considered the two-stage paints. There's also things known as four-stage out there, which are fairly rare, but they do exist. When it comes to things like three-stage, they're usually, the most common one is white, the white pearl or white tri-coat, but there are three-stage versions in red that are also fairly common. I've also seen blue. I think I've even seen three-stage black once or twice. So things are out there. It gets complex. You have to follow a lot of information. Each manufacturer is different. Each manufacturer has different recommendations. Now, not all of them are created the same. Some of those documents are not readily available to the public, while others are easily available for free on the internet if you look for them. There's also other third-party sites out there that can help you get access to the data items like AllData and others. There are iCar is another one that I think about it. Anyways, getting off on a bit of a tangent, but I just kind of trying to explain just the estimating portion of the process is a lot. Then you get into documenting unrelated damages to the claim, or what's known as UPD, unrelated prior damage, or they can be just considered normal wear and tear, whatever the case may be. So there's a whole liability side of things. There's a whole side that's determining the medical or bodily injury damages, casualty, if somebody's passed away during the claim process or during the accident. There's also different types of claims. You have the common ones that people think of are known as collision claims. Those involve everything where like there's an impact of the vehicle moving and hitting another component, typically another car, but it could be a pole, it could be a bunch of stuff. The other type of claim that you often see are known as comprehensive claims. Comprehensive claims are a little more in regards to items where it didn't actually collide with something, but there are exceptions. For example, comprehensive claims can can include the hitting unfortunately, if they make an impact with an animal like a deer or something. But most comprehensive claims refer to things such as acts of nature. They could like flooding or lightning. It could also refer to theft, fire, things along those lines, depending on the way that the state is set up and the way that the insurance company has their claims set up. So there is a lot of variance to these things and the way they're handled depending on where you're at and what company you're dealing with. So there's a lot to keep in mind there. Also, the shops themselves are often different from one another. The repair facilities. A lot of people think, and they're totally in the right to do so, of course, to go to the dealer when they have an accident. However, the dealer may not have all the like the required setup at their location to handle the type of repairs that you have. Most dealers obviously include service departments, sales departments, but if you have a collision damage, those may need to go to something called the collision center, which handle more like the body work and paint work. And there are dealers with those on site, but sometimes they are off site. Sometimes they partner with a third party body and paint vendor to handle their collision work when those occur. Or maybe they can't handle that whatsoever and they're not partnered with anybody. So those are things to think about. Also, you have to know that there's multiple people you'll probably talk to during a claim if you have an insurance claim in the auto industry. And also, just on a side note, there's obviously other types of insurance besides just auto, such as home insurance, life insurance, things along those lines, health insurance, of course. But anyways, going back to specifically the auto part, you'll typically deal with an inside rep to start. I consider them like the liability person. They're usually the one that handles the getting police reports. They get the recorded statements. They get any documentation from the customer, maybe photos, anything. They went to see a doctor. They need copies of anything they were given in those circumstances. They, at least with some insurance companies, are often known as the file owner or maybe like a claims manager. And there's different levels to it. There is like the basic person that's gathering the information, but most things have to be approved by supervisors and up to a certain amount of like a certain payout. And if the payout is beyond the supervisor's authorization level, it goes up even higher. Sometimes second opinions have to be given from other management reps even higher up in the company. So it can get really complicated at times. Then you have the side that I've often worked on, which is the estimating side. I have worked, of course, the name has changed depending on where I've worked. It can be anything from a managed repair rep to an auto damage adjuster, auto damage estimator, collision estimator, anything along those lines. But basically the one documenting the damages themselves, typically in person at the vehicle, sometimes based off of just customer photos or shop photos. But generally speaking, we're the people that are like on the ground or like basically there, going to the car itself, getting everything in person, writing the estimates, getting quotes about things if necessary, if it's something that's not in the estimating database, which does occur. Not every single part on every single car is in the database. Also, depending if you're dealing with a body shop, a dealership, or a mix of the two, in some cases, it can get really complicated. And there's multiple people you have to speak to and get invoices from. Maybe you got to get different angles of the photos, so that you're audited on these claims when you write an estimate. The insurance companies don't just let you pay out anything you want. They want to make sure what you're paying, number one, is loss related. And number two, that you are not just paying whatever the shop may want, like a wish list, but actually what's needed to complete repairs to that pre-loss condition and hopefully reach an agreed price with the shops. What happens if you can't reach an agreed price with the shops? It can be very tense at times. And just for reference, I've worked on all sides of this industry. I started with rental, then I worked for insurance, then I worked at the collision center inside of a dealership. Then I did my world travels. Then I came back, moved to another state, and then I worked for a chain collision center. Then I worked for another dealership collision center. And then at the time of this video, I'm currently back working for an insurance company. People have often asked me, what side of the industry is better? And honestly, all of them have their good and bad, just to be clear. So I won't go too far down that road. But generally speaking, just what you need to know when you have a claim. Document everything. Make sure you take photos at the scene if you can. Get the other person's information. Don't just write it down necessarily. Take a photo of their driver's license, perhaps, whatever the case may be. Because if they disappear, you want to be able to find out more information about the vehicle. Document your own vehicle well. You can often submit photos and videos in the claim app of your insurance company. And those things will go into the claim and will stay in the claim. And anybody that handles that claim on any side of the claim process will have access to those items. Make sure your recorded statement is thorough. And also let the people that are asking you the questions during the recorded statement ask what they need to ask and clarify whatever they need to clarify or you need to clarify. Reason being, they are reading a script that is approved, that is written in a very legal way, and so they can't go off script. They have requirements that they are required to follow in regards to the way they ask you the questions and the questions that they ask and the order they ask them. It's along those lines typically. Obviously, every company is different, but that's just a general sense. Also, you're going to have times where you are like when you're writing an estimate and you're being supervised and you're being audited, you're going to often be defending yourself from your own bosses. By your own bosses, they're going to ask you a lot of questions. Why did you pay for this? Why did you not pay for this? Why didn't you do this thing? Why did you say this, or whatever the case may be? So you have to be very thorough, because you want anything. These things often go to court. A lot of people sue in the United States, and if it does, you want your notes to be able to stand up to somebody who has no familiarity with the claim, not familiar with how the insurance or the repair process works. So you need to be able to explain it to somebody that was not there, didn't handle anything, and knows little to nothing about the auto repair industry on any side of things. So you have to, take that extra time a lot of times to make things clear, explain things in detail, add names and phone numbers of who you spoke to and when you spoke to them. Whatever the case may be, it all can be helpful in the long run for many reasons, including protecting yourself as the employee. And of course, does everybody do it this thoroughly? No, but these are things that I personally do and that I recommend doing to cover yourself in regards to when you're being questioned, cover yourself on not only from your own supervisor and their questions, but also when you get audited. They often do 2 audits a year, usually like a local one and then like a more of like a national one. So certain claims will get cherry picked at times because they'll see something that stands out that makes them know like this is the one that we're going to pick at. So anyways, what can you do to protect yourself as a consumer? People often ask, what is the best insurance company out there? What is the best repair facility out there? And this is where it gets complicated because a lot of times people will say, well, what's the best insurance company? Well, that is a near impossible question to answer. Reason being, I've seen good and bad at insurance companies that I thought were great. I've seen good and bad at ones that I thought were bad. What I've realized just doing this for nearly 2 decades now, with a little bit of break in between when I was doing all my travels, but what I have noticed is that it depends more about who is handling your claim and less about the company that's handling your claim. You have to kind of get lucky and get somebody that is good at their job, that makes the effort to go the extra mile for you in some cases. Does it mean that you're going to have a bad experience if you don't have somebody who's very thorough and good at their job? Not necessarily. It depends on the claim. Also, when it comes to the repair facilities, that can be very hit or miss too. And most of the times they're going off of reviews online or, oh, this is my friend's shop, or they were recommended from so and so. Just realize that everybody's got their own benefits in the repair process. The rental car side of things, obviously they want to get the cars on the road at the highest possible rental rate per day they can, and they don't want cars sitting on the lot. I'll go more into rental side of things in another video, but obviously, everybody's in the business to make money, no matter what side you're on. Is what I'm kind of hinting at here. So the rentals got their priorities. The repair facilities definitely have their priorities too. Sometimes people ask for things they don't really need. Sometimes people will ask for things that in a perfect world, we would get this. Or sometimes I'll ask for things that are kind of like the cost of doing business, whether it be shipping fees or whatever. And are they entitled to ask for those things? They can do whatever they want. They can ask for anything they want. It's up to the insurance side of thing to decide whether they're going to pay for it or not. And if the insurance side doesn't agree to pay for it, then it's up to the shop to decide if they're charging the customer for those things or not. You will see shady things in this industry. I have seen shady things in all aspects of it. And it makes it tough because if you're an ethical, honest person, when you see those things, sometimes, like for example, you can report them and you can try to do things, but sometimes things don't end up actually being done about them. You'll report them and be like, oh my gosh, they've admitted to this fraud and they've admitted to working together with the shop, and it won't ultimately lead to anything. So you can't take that stuff personally. Just, do your job, document well. If you see something wrong, report it, whether it's to your direct supervisors or to HR or to whoever. Sometimes they have what's known as SIU departments or special investigation units in the insurance side of things. Follow company guidelines. And it can be a really tough job because you're getting the stress of all the other sides of the process. You're getting the stress from the customer wanting to know when their car is going to be ready. They want to know how much it's going to cost. How much are they going to have to pay? Obviously, they don't want to pay anything out of pocket if they can avoid it. So there's that. Then you have to deal with like parts manufacturers and parts, vendors. And hey, when's the part going to arrive? Oh, the part came in damaged. Oh, this wasn't the part you said you were going to send. Oh, there's a holiday. Now it's delayed. Oh, okay, that wasn't the right part. I'm sending it back. I need you to credit me back the money that you charged me. So there's that whole side of things. As I mentioned, the rental and a lot of cars are rented that probably shouldn't be rented, whether they need oil changes or repairs. But these, rental companies sit so tight sometimes and they have so many reservations going that, they don't want cars sitting. That means losing money. So there's a lot of pushing cars and a lot of turnover with cars, and people don't always treat rental cars well. So there's a lot of stress when it comes to rental and making sure rentals are extended and customers aren't going to get charged, because it's very easy for the rentals to fall behind if you're not watching those things on the insurance side. And if they do, don't be surprised if the rental car company calls up the customer and says, hey, your insurance company stopped paying for your rental, or hey, we're going to charge you if they don't extend this rental and things. So there's a lot of people freaking out on that side of things too. Over the years, I've seen a lot of that. Also, when it comes to the insurance side, your bosses have very high expectations of you. You have a certain amount of cars you're expected to see per day. They don't typically like it if you get them done, if you have to reschedule stuff, because they're depending on you for the next day to be ready for the next set of cars. You'll often be given a territory when you work on the insurance side of things, but you're constantly having to help other people in their territories, which then means you have less time to work on your own stuff. Of course, people may help you too, but it may not be the type of help that you want. They might not do as good of a job as you, or in your opinion, and then you come back to even more mess than when you left. So there's a lot of frustration with that, at least from my personal experience. I've had a lot of that over the years. Also, a lot of being told that, you know, you're overpaying for everything and you should have done better. And always, it never ends. Because you're trying to, as the insurance side, you're trying to reach an agreed price with the shop. You're trying to make the customer happy. You're trying to keep it as cost effective as possible. And you're trying to get the repairs done as quickly as possible, even though you're not repairing the vehicle. You're typically just the bill payer in the process on the insurance side. The car repair facility is the one repairing it, but if they can't get a good estimate, then they're not going to go and start the repairs, or they're going to have to stop the repairs midway through. And then the customer gets upset that the repairs are taking too long. Meanwhile, they also may not make your car a priority when you work for the repair shops. Sometimes those technicians that are working on the cars may have 8 to 10 cars going at the same time. They're typically going to focus on the ones that are the priority from their managers, like if they run like a drive-in type of situation where they're graded on speed, or they're going to work on the cars that they're getting paid the best on, because they are paid on commission. That's a very important point. Typically on the rental and insurance sides, you're getting paid on salary. It doesn't matter how many cars you rent or how many estimates you write. You're getting paid whatever your standard salary is. Does that mean you can't make bonuses or things? No, there are, depending on the company, maybe things in place where you can get extra money depending on certain things, especially if you're in management positions and things. But when you're at the collision center or you're working at the dealership, you're usually on commission, which can typically lead to a lot more money, but not necessarily. It depends on, number one, where you're working and what type of repairs you're getting. If you're working at a high-end dealer of high-end vehicles, luxury vehicles, you may be able to make more, but it's all based on your pay plans. It's also based on what accounts they let you handle. They may have their favorites, and it might be a little more political than you would like it to be. Hey, so-and-so gets those accounts. Those aren't yours to handle. You can't handle that one. You got to hand those over to them so they can handle them. And meanwhile, you might have to take whatever's left, especially if there are things in place and there are people in place that they prefer to handle the priority accounts because, for whatever reason. So it can be tough. I've had times at shops where I was doing amazing money, but I was also putting in crazy amounts of effort and crazy amounts of hours so that I would basically be working up to 12 hours a day, 60 hours a week, sometimes up to 65 hours a week. And why did I do all that? Because I wanted to be prepared for the next day so I could take in more cars, make more money, and therefore make more commission for the month. There's a lot to this industry, and it's always changing. The technology's changing. Cars are getting more and more complicated. There's more and more sensors and electronics and options on the vehicles. There's a whole process to doing total loss vehicles where the vehicle's not considered repairable. And there's a whole process to get an accurate evaluation of what the vehicles are worth. You name it. There is a lot to know, and you'll never know it all because there's always different sides to things, and things are always changing, and every company's different, and the estimating programs are different, and every state has its own laws that are different. Obviously some may overlap or some may be the same, but for example, I've worked in Florida and Georgia, and Florida and Georgia have different rules and regulations on a few things. For example, in Georgia, there's something known as diminished value. There's a law that if you have been in an accident, especially like a collision accident, and your vehicle is on the newer side of things, and you may be entitled to loss of value for your vehicle being in that accident. When your car shows up on a Carfax report, people are going to see that your vehicle's been in a collision, and that may devalue what your car's worth. So you may be compensated by the insurance companies for this loss of value or diminished value of your vehicle. But that does not exist in Florida, and that doesn't exist in pretty much any state for the most part that I'm familiar with, that I've personally handled at least. So there's a lot of little things like that to know. And if you want to know more, put something in the comments. If you know me personally, I'll be happy to explain it in further detail. But just know, there is no one size fits all. Find the insurance company and policy that works for you. Do your research on the shops, because you want to have a good repair facility, and you want to make sure they warranty their work, and you want to make sure that you know what you're doing, and you know what you're looking for, and you know the right questions to ask. Hopefully this video has given you some information so you know like how to be better prepared, because unfortunately not everybody out there has your best interests at heart. But for the most part, most people will do the right thing by you, or at least attempt to, and they do want the best. I always say that despite us all being on kind of like competing sides, or maybe different parts of the repair process where we don't always see eye to eye on things because our jobs are not made in a way to do so. Obviously, where the shops are trying to get as much money as they can, and the insurance companies trying not to pay as much as possible. So, I mean, that's a very, very general and blanket statement, but because of that, sometimes it puts things at a combative nature. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I'd like to think we all want repairs to go smoothly. We all want to make as much money as possible, at the end of the day with our jobs. And we want to have the customers be happy and get their vehicle back to them as soon as possible. The quicker the vehicle goes back to that customer, the quicker we can focus on the next car and the next repair and the next possible battle, depending on the insurance and repair facility, and even the rental sometimes. So that's my 2 cents about it. It would take hours to go into even more depth, but that gives you a general sense of what's out there, what it's like. And of course, in other countries, they have their own set of things. This is specific to the United States that I'm referring to. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, and I'll hope to see you at the next video.